I want to bring in Jack Keane now, Fox News senior strategic analyst. And sir, good morning. Welcome back to our coverage here. Michael Waltz, a Republican from Florida, on a bit earlier today. Here is how he sees it, and then we'll ask you to size up this timeline. Watch.
I do think it's imminent, and it's very likely that Putin is going to invade. And what does it mean for the United States? It means destabilized Europe. Putin believes he can reconstitute the old Soviet Union and challenge the United States on the world stage.
So that is the backdrop. Do you agree with that, General? Let's start there.
Well, let's start with the timeline itself. Listen, weather is a factor in most military operations, and it certainly is here. So our audience understands heavy armor operations supported by artillery. You need solid ground to do that. There's a mild winter in Ukraine, so therefore it's taken longer for the ground to freeze. It is frozen now. And certainly, this is ideal conditions to conduct those armor operations, as I discussed. Certainly, air power would support it. But there's another factor here as well, and that is the Beijing Olympics. Putin is going to it on 4 February. It ends on 20 February. He will not conduct an invasion during that time, in my judgment, and detract from his cohort and his friends' major propaganda venture, which they have invested years and billions of money into. But here's another factor. The ground begins to thaw in mid-March. So the Olympics end on the 20th. We got about a month or so with favorable conditions to support heavy armor operations. It doesn't mean they cannot do it when the ground thaws and you got more mud than anything else. It's more challenging then. Favorable conditions end around mid-March in terms of the timeline.
General, what do you think about this proposal, the possibility of the president deciding to send 5,000 more troops to the region? Like, what would they be doing? Is that a deterrence? Would they be doing any fighting? I don't think that they've spelled that out well enough.
Yeah, well, certainly. Putin's objectives here, as we've discussed many times, he doesn't want a flourishing democratic capitalistic society right on his border that is only 300 miles from Moscow, and that's what his interest in Ukraine has been from the outset. His second major interest is to undermine and weaken NATO itself. What the president has done in meeting with his advisor, he's made a major policy shift here. We have been talking about for weeks that we should be doing preemptive action to deter Putin, not just threats of actions that we're going to take after an invasion, do something before. We provided some military aid, not nearly enough, in my view. And now we're going to put some troops in NATO countries to reinforce those countries, not just troops, from what I understand, air power and warships as well from the United States. Decision not made, likely made later this week. Good step, something that should have been done earlier. And that shows some intention and seriousness on the part of the United States. These are the kind of things that Putin respects. I don't believe that in of itself will deter the invasion, but certainly it's a step in the right direction. There's so much more that we could do. All those things that we're talking about doing after the invasion, many of those should be ongoing right now. And Putin would get a taste of what this really means to him in terms of his economy, which is at 8% inflation. We know what 6% is doing to us. And certainly, if we were squeezing him economically right now and telling him, listen, we'll turn the valve off as soon as you withdraw your army from Ukraine, and we have complete justification for doing it. For Putin to say, look, and I can move my troops around my country all I want to do, that's up to me. In theory, that's correct. In fact, when you put an army and position it and prepare it for a major invasion, that is something that we have a right to respond to. And we should have done that by now.